Hi guys, in this video tutorial I'm going to demonstrate my working techniques in creating first-person weapons for video games. On the example of this particular gun, it's Springfield XD Mod 2 3 inches barrel subcompact model, caliber 9mm. So, this kind of gun is a good representative of a modern looking weapon, and there are some main challenges with this kind of weapon. First of all, it is complex shapes, like this slide. It has a lot of cutouts and custom bevels and this serrations, so it's a good example of how you can model something a bit more complicated, as well as the frame of this pistol. So, and another main challenge for this kind of asset is materials, for video games, because most of the modern weapons, they use polymer and just black gunmetal, and sometimes it's really hard to give a story to this gun because it's actually pretty new gun, and most of modern weapons, they don't have that much of history. For example, if you do gun from World War II, it's been in battlefield a lot, and you can imagine how tiered and wary it can be. But as for modern guns, it's a bit more trickier. Of course, they can have the same level of wear and all that kind of stuff, but it's a bit harder to make material look good, because in real life, what's in real life is not going to look good in video game, like this brand new material. It looks good on photos, but you need to add some story, you need to add some variation and make this blank brand new polymer material look interesting. So that's kind of challenge for this type of weapons. So okay, so we're done with a bit of an intro. These are main programs that I'm going to use during this tutorial. For high poly, I'm going to use Maya 2018 and ZBrush 2019. You can use also 2018, but it's going to be a bit trickier with that one. These are two core programs for high poly and low poly for me. So I highly recommend you to follow me along with these programs. Okay, so for unwrapping, baking, and all kind of stuff, I'm using Maya and UV Layout. UV Layout is a must-have for those kind of UVing, and Resom UV VS or RS, Resom UV basically. This is also a very handy program for that stuff. For texturing, I use Substance Painter. So, and I'll do presentation in Marmoset Toolbag 3. Okay, so these are main programs that I'm going to use. So whenever I start modeling any kind of gun, obviously it is very important to gather as much reference as possible. I use this program called PureRef. It's this one. It's free. It basically creates a big board where you can just drag and drop any picture, and it can be saved in a single file. So it's really handy, and it gives you opportunity not to store all the photos in folder and browse through them. You can have it on a single board. So, and you can pick any picture, scale it and rotate it, whatever. So it's really good like software for referencing. I highly recommend you to have this one. Okay, so when I start to model a gun, I gather as much references as possible. The sources can be different. That depends on a gun. For me, I have this like modern looking gun. It is still in production, and you can go just to their official website, like Springfield Armory, and get all the specs for the gun, like all the needed information, like photos, like view gallery, and you will have like all kind of like photos you need. That's really cool. But sometimes you can go with some really rare gun or like an old gun, and there are some really good sources for those kind of guns. It's obviously you can just Google them, but also you can find them at online auctions. It's an amazing source for references because they have really high res pictures, and what is even greater than that, and those guns are usually used, so there'll be some kind of story behind those pictures, and you will be able to use that as a reference for texturing. And so yeah, like online auctions is a good choice. Another thing is videos. Videos are really useful as well. There is this like YouTube channel called Forgotten Weapons, and it's an amazing like YouTube channel. This guy, he travels all over the world and reviews different kind of guns. He shows how they operate. He has some close-ups of any kind of gun. He has the close-ups of all the guns that he's doing basically, and it's extremely helpful. You can find like rare guns here, like sometimes you can find quite modern guns. So it's really good one, and in general this channel will help you to understand like the main operation of the guns, like how they work and how they perform. This is this was the next thing I was going to talk about. So like when you're doing gun, you need to know how it works. That will help you dramatically, because like you can actually say this statement in any kind of field. So in order to rebuild something or create something from scratch, you need to know how it works. And basically, like if you are trying to do a weapon, you should be into weapons, and that will help you like a lot. And that will help you to figure some stuff out, because not all the times you will have like 100% amount of all the references you need from any kind of angle and all that kind of stuff. There will be like moments when you will have to like come up with some like made up stuff because you just could not find reference, and like you can get that information of what to do based on your knowledge of weapons. So this is very helpful thing, and like knowing stuff about weapons and how they work and like different types of like cycling of guns and all that kind of stuff is really helpful. So like don't mind and do your research on weapons and how they work. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to talk about is like, let's get to modeling, right? And a lot of people, when they start to model a gun, they start to model like the frame, the slide, or if it's like a different kind of gun, like they just block out the main shapes and all kind of stuff. And that's kind of bad. well, you can be lucky and you will have a good result out of it, but it's not always gonna work with you, because like there are a lot of situations I had, like I met a lot of people who like were starting doing guns, and they were modeling like the half of the gun, and in the middle of their process they found out that something is not working, like the magazine is too wide, or like the frame is too thin for magazine to fit, and something like that. And even if you have those specs like here, like the width of the grip or the length of the gun, and you have those high-res pictures, you're still not going to be 100% accurate with this like gun, because there's basically no like perfect orthogonal side picture of a gun, because every camera has its own lens, and the lens distorts the like perspective of the thing that it captures. So like here, for example, you can see that there's a top part pops out, and like well, this is a bad example. Like for example, okay, so I guess you get my point, that it is impossible to take a perfectly orthogonal picture that you will be able to use as your like solid 100% reference. And that's why I start modeling every gun with a cartridge. Like I Google, obviously I will have to know what kind of ammunition this gun uses. So this is a classic 9mm gun, like the most popular rounds throughout the world. And bullet basically is like the lowest like unit of a gun, and the purpose of the gun is to cycle those cartridges through magazine into barrel and out of the gun. And since you have like this part model out like perfectly, and you can actually do that almost perfectly, because you can go into Wikipedia and find all the needed information about any caliber you want. You have all the specs here, like bullet diameter, mag diameter, base diameter, all that kind of stuff, and you can like do a really like accurate model of a bullet. Then when you have a bullet, you can model, I'm going to model a barrel so that the barrel will fit the bullet, and then I'm going to model magazine that will fit all the bullets. I mean cartridges. Bullet is like this tip thing, and this is the case, and altogether it's cartridge. So when you have those three main things, like the cartridge, barrel, and magazine all together, it's really, really easier to build the rest of the gun upon that. So I guess it's quite clear now, and enough talking. Let's get into modeling. Okay, so as I said before, I'm using ZBrush and Maya. I have like a bit set up here already, but I'll explain everything in details. So these are two main softwares. Right now I'm going to focus on Maya, because I will do some preparations in Maya, and then we'll go into ZBrush. And as I said before, like you should not be like 100% depending on the side picture, but you actually need one, because though it's not 100% accurate, but you need to know where all the parts should be fitted, and like eyeballing the parts is not the best solution, right? So you have to have something like for this side view. And I found this pretty not bad like picture of a like somewhat orthogonal view. I'm going to repeat that it's not orthogonal, it's distorted and it's warped, but it like somewhere there, okay? It has this weird clip. We're not going to model that, it happened that this picture has the gun with this clip. Okay, So the next thing that we need to know is what units we're going to use. Like the gun specs are in inches, and we can have the same info for the cartridge in inches as well, so let's use inches. I'm going to hide my reference board on my second monitor, so I will drag it back whenever it's needed. So to set our units, I click on this guy, go into settings, and working units inches, like here, and click save. So now whenever we create a primitive, like this box, we go here and all the specs in here are in inches. So, okay, another thing about software, I'm not going to explain the very fundamentals of this program. I will explain what I'm doing, and I guess for a real beginner, it is possible to catch up, but I'm not going to go deep with the program fundamentals. No kind of introduction or something like that. So though I will explain what I'm doing. So, and even if you're new, you will be able to follow. Also, I have this custom shelf with my shortcut keys and some scripts, and I will share them in project folder and will explain along the path what those things mean and what they do. So nothing too complicated here as well. Okay, so let's start modeling our cartridge. I'll delete this box and let's go with cylinder, obviously. And okay, so when modeling the high poly model, I tend to use primitives with exact edge count, particular in cylinders that I'm going to use on a low poly, so that I could use the same meshes from high poly on the low poly model, and there would be no need to remodel those primitives. That's something I always keep in mind. So for this, this cylinder represents the cartridge, and I would like to increase the amount of edges along it. So let's set it to 32, like that. Yeah, so any kind of cylinder I'm using, I try to make it the exact amount of edges, so that there would be horizontal line, splitting this cylinder into halves, and the same thing with vertical and horizontal lines. And that's really useful thing, because when you will have to, for example, delete a half of the cylinder, you will be able to do that and mirror it back, something like that. So it is really good for those kind of operations. So whenever I do a cylinder, I try to do the edges that can split the cylinder into half or even into quarters. Okay, so let's get the diameter and length of our cartridge. So okay, so overall length is 1.169 inches. 1.169. This is the length of the cartridge, and you can see different diameters here. The widest diameter is rim diameter, 0.392. It's because the round is tapered. So here is the widest part. Here is the narrowest one. So let's stick to the widest one. Just for now, 0.392 its diameter, but we need to dial the radius, so we have to divide that number by 2. So it's 0396 392, excuse me, 0392 by 2, it's 0.196. 0.196. Okay. So this cylinder now represents our cartridge, like the main proportions of it, the length and the diameter. So, oh, right, as for the reference, how I did this, it is an image plane. What you need to do to set this picture in your scene, you just go into side view like this, like hit space button on your keyboard, select the side view, go into view and image plane, import image. So you will be having this kind of picture. And what I did next, I just added it into new layer. Like I clicked this icon and it created this layer. So now whenever I click on visible and like this icon V, which means visible, so I can hide and unhide this image plane. And there's also this good thing here set to R, which means reference. Now you cannot select it. Okay, so right now I'll keep it like this. So go into side view. Right, I will adjust the image plane later according to the size of the bullet and all kind of stuff. We can just hide it right now. Okay, so let's duplicate this cylinder and make a case length. So in order to do that, you need to duplicate special, because you need to preserve this input graph with specs for the cylinder. In order to do that, select the cylinder, edit, duplicate special, hit here, number copies 1, and duplicate input graph, apply. Now we have two cylinders and we can still edit it. So the case length is 0.754. 0.754, like this. Okay. So now we have the length of the case. And now let's turn this cylinder into the cartridge. So I have my hotkeys, and my hotkey S is for a multi-cut, which can be found in modeling toolkit. Multi-cut, you can just click here, or I have my hotkey, hold Control, and it will create the edge loop, supporting edge loop, and place it just here. So whatever you would like to change your hotkeys, you can go basically into Windows, Settings, Preferences, Hotkey Editor, and type any command you want, like multi-cut. Here it is, you can see it's set S. Alright, so whenever you need this, I have it on S. Okay, so what I would like to do is basically split the cylinder into two parts for the bullet and the case. And you can select these faces and, excuse me, shift right mouse button and extract faces. Alright, so now these objects are separate. So we can delete this one now because we have the length correct. Let's go into perspective view. So at this point we don't need go any further into those exact parameters and specifications. Well, since this asset is for video games, there's no need for like that kind of accuracy. If you want, you can do that, no problem, but I'm okay with that. So I'll just eyeball all the rest stuff for the cartridge. The only thing I'll do is just taper a bit, like just slightly, because the cartridge is tapered. I'll go to custom and select and center pivot. Like this is a center pivot. You can find it in alright, I found it. It's here, like modify center pivot. So let's taper this one a bit like this, and I hit Control-1 for isolate. Select these edges and Shift, drag, extrude like this. Shift, drag, extrude, Shift, drag, extrude. And now I would like to close hole. It's here. I have it here, and it's in Mesh, Fill Hole. Click it. Since we're doing like the high poly, we don't need to worry about n-gons, so I'll just leave it like that. And let's do the rest of the cartridge. Delete those faces. Select edges. This is just the way I like to model cylinders. Like if you have different like approach for them, no problem. This is just basic like subdiv modeling. Anyone can have his own like ways. Shift drag, extrude, Shift drag, extrude, and Shift drag, extrude again. Close hole. Now like multi-cut support edge here. Drag it like this. What we did here is a primer, like the area where a hammer of a gun or a striker hits, and which ignites the the gunpowder inside of the case. Right, forgot the word. So like this. Now let's create a rim. Again, I'm not like 100% following the specs for the bullets, just eyeballing it. It should be somewhere here, so let's do it like here. It's not that much of importance, like this. So this is pretty much the case. We can turn off the grid. And right now I'm going to add some supporting edges. And I'm actually going to apply some material here. Save the scene. Like go into Hypershade and create a blend material. I have it already here. Like it shades a bit better the object, and it's more glossy. And you can see this highlights here. It's much better for smooth objects. I hit 3, and we can see that we are lacking our support edges. So let's add those like here and here. Again, this is basic sub-D modeling right now. Nothing too special. Like this. Okay, this looks better now. I'd like to add some more here and here. All right. We're liking one here. Oh, we actually have the bevel here. Go into modeling toolkit and bevel, like this. Go add some support edges here. Go into object mode, smooth it out, and looks good. Looks great. Control-1. Let's do the same with the case. So let's select these edges. bevel those like this. Let's go add some more segments like this. Go into side view, select these vertices. What I'm going to do here is that I need to scale those verts like the on to the left, right? But if I just hit R and scale, the length of the bullet will be messed. So what I do here, just hold D and move the pivot manually to this point, and now we can scale it like this. All right. So here's my reference for the cartridge. Looks somewhat as we need it. Yep. Let's apply the material. Assign existing material boolean. Hit 3. Okay. We need to close this hole. Select edges. Shift, drag, extrude, and just close a hole at supporting edge here. Hit 3. We need to move it closer to this, like so. All right. So basically we're done. Those kind of artifacts are not acceptable if you are doing this like only in Maya. I will leave it like this just for now because I'm going to export this into ZBrush and Dynamesh it in the final, and I'll be able to smooth this area and it will look smooth. But if you're modeling only Maya, this would look bad and this should be fixed. There are different ways to fix that. You can basically do this shape out of like box, for example. Like here you can have your box and go into mesh, smooth, and add some, like for example, 2 subdivisions. And delete these faces, for example, and extrude this out, something like this. But keep in mind that it's not perfectly circled. You will have to go into polymodeling and this circlize. It's called. It basically creates a perfect circle out of shapes you have selected. Like click it and you can see that now it turned into perfect circle. Well, I'm not just doing it because it takes more time than just go into cylinder, and it's actually is not looking perfect when smoothed, for example. Well, it's kind of hard to see it right now, but believe me, like here, and here, there are some like minor artifacts, but still it's okay. It's pretty good. It looks smooth. It definitely has no those artifacts, so you can do like that. But for now, I'll leave it like this because I'll be going to ZBrush next. Okay, so we can actually scale this down just a bit to make this curb like pop out more. Okay, that looks better. Okay, so now we have our bullet. Let's combine those 2 meshes to make it more easier to manipulate. Like I have it in custom shelf. Combine selected polygons. It's in mesh combine, right? So select those 2. Combine, and whenever I do operations like combine, target weld, multi-cut, or whatever, basically any kind of operation, I tend to clear history after that because I don't know, I mean, like this is your history, I don't find this really useful in Maya, and uh, I don't like this feature, so I have this reflex of deleting history every time. For example, because you can have some issues with that. Because, for example, if you model this thing, whatever you modeled, you save your scene, you do not clear the history of this object, and you close Maya, you can open this Maya back again, open this project, and you will see that your mesh is messed up, and it's a mess, and it's going to, you will have to redo this because it's going to look like shit. So whenever I model anything, I tend to clear history. It can be done like edit, delete by type, and history. And it also has its like shortcut by default hotkey, Alt Shift D. So I hit it all the time, like right now, Alt Shift D, and you can see that those things gone. So, and it actually helps for Maya to work even faster when you clear history all the time. Okay, so we have a bullet. Let's do the barrel. Now let's turn on an image plane here. Let's call it reference. Save. All right. So that we could understand what it is. I don't need it for now, actually. Okay, so let's do the barrel. Barrel is going to be pretty much the same process. Go into cylinder. It's going to be 32 edges for now. And the length of the barrel is in here for specs. It's 3 inches. It's not with, yeah, it's length, right? Obviously it's length. It's pretty short barrel for a handgun. So let's go to 3. And now, as you can see, we do not have information about the diameter of the barrel. And we will have to somehow figure it out by eye, like eyeball that. That's why I built bullet before that, so that I can reference the bullet before doing the barrel. Like you can see what I'm going with here. So like, let's turn on transparency mode. Also delete those faces. Hit delete. Turn on grid. Also, as you can see, I like to keep my cylinder shapes like in the center of coordinates. It's easier. For example, this barrel, I'll keep it like this so that the frame of the gun will be underneath the grid. Sometimes having like this main cylinder shape in the center of the coordinates is really handy and useful. So just my habit. Obviously, you will have to have your gun centered along like y-axis. And oh right, y-axis. I have my, in settings, I have my z-axis as up. It's just like another my habit, so if you don't have it like this, just turn it on. It would be easier for you to follow along. So basically, if you're doing like a gun, and some parts obviously can be mirrored, so make sure that your gun is centered, right? That's like that's a basic information right here, foundation. Okay, so let's do the barrel, the diameter of the barrel, somewhat like this. Again, this is not rocket science. We don't have to be like extremely precise. Like this is fine. It doesn't have to fit the case, but the bullet, and it will fit the bullet, right? So this is the length of the barrel. Let's give it a bit thickness. Select all faces, hit Control E, and now just drag along this axis, and let's figure out the thickness of the barrel. Here my references, it's quite thick, so let's do it somewhat like this. We can actually edit this at any point, but it's just easier to go like from interior parts to exterior parts, though you can edit those things, but like this makes the working process easier. So like this. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine for now. Okay, so this is the barrel. It actually beveled just a bit here and here. This one is round and this one is not. It's flat, so let's bevel this one. Add a bit of segment, add additional segments. Let's keep it like this and bevel over here like this. Yep, okay. Keep it like this, add material. All right, save your scene. I tend to do that all the time. It's really useful. Okay, so now we can actually unhide our reference, and now we can adjust this picture to fit our objects. For example, our barrel. This is the beginning of the barrel right there, and there's a tip of it. Yeah, I can hide the cartridge for now, or just move it. Yep, pretty much like this. Okay. Okay, so now the reference image closely represents the proportions of the gun, and we can set it to reference, so it's not, it won't be, you won't be able to edit it when you're like selecting stuff. Okay, so this is not the final barrel, of course, because it's far more complicated, but as a blockout it will work for now. So let's do the same thing for the magazine. And I'm going to model the gun with extended magazine. Here it is, and it holds 16 rounds. Yep, here it is, 16 rounds, extended mag. So what we do, I do this. I have this cartridge, go to side view, and I duplicate it, Control D, and move it somewhere over here, like here. This is like usually the place where the round pops up out of the magazine. It's not over here because slide is not flat at this point. It is flat. It is like the height of the slide is like we see here, but inside it has like this groove. Let me show you, like here. See, this is the side part, but inside it is like deeper. So the bullet is somewhere here. All right, and there's a feed ramp right here at the barrel. It's right here. See this? This is like the entrance port, the chamber, and this is the feed ramp. So when the slide goes forward, it catches the bullet from the magazine with this part and pushes it all the way up into the barrel. Okay, so let's do the blockout of the magazine. What I do here, just simple box and edit verts. Okay, so another useful thing, since we have the bullet, we can adjust the proper dimension of the magazine, which is really important. So like the length of it, like this, so that it could fit the round like this. You can see it fits there like this. Okay, and now let's select vertices and go all the way down here like this. Let's get it even higher a bit, like this, and the bullet as well, like this. All right. Yep, somewhat like this, but we need to extend it a bit so that it could be so that it was longer. All right. Now, the width of the magazine is also one of the most important parts while modeling weapons, because the width of the magazine is basically the only thing that determines the width of the whole weapon. And as you know, the width of handguns extremely depends on the width of the magazine, because some guns are double stacked, or single stacked, which means that magazine holds like 2 rows of bullets or a single row. Like for example, 1911, it holds a single row of rounds, which means like the general width of the gun is thinner. Like regular double stacked guns, they are a bit thicker. Okay, so this is a really important part, and this thing will determine the width of the frame. So about the shape of the magazine, it is, at this point, it goes like angled. It's straight and angled here. So let's do this. Let's create that angle like this, and scale those fid lips thinner like this. Okay, so this is just a rough representation of the magazine. Now let's go with the thickness. Go into front view, and as you can see, the gun, the magazine have like 2 rounds on the top in the center, and after like second round they go like zigzag into 2 rows. So let's do pretty much the same thing. Duplicate it, fit it right here. Now duplicate it again and go sideways and sideways again, like this. Now let's select and deselect this. Right. So now let's check how they duplicate this and move it like this. We're, well, pretty much perfectly fitting. Let's move those guys a bit sideways, these upwards. Yeah, this is good. So we should have 16 rounds. It's 4, 6, 10, 14, and 16. Like this. So I'm actually not going to move all those rounds into the magazine. I just need this thing to figure out the width of the mag, and I'm going to use only like this 2 top rounds because the rest won't be seen inside of the magazine. I don't need those. But for now, let's go into magazine and adjust this width. Like this. You can see that I am placing them not perfectly. Let's basically combine them. Right, Alt-Shift-D, clear history. Now let's center the pivot, and here's a bit trick. Go into grid and turn on the snapping to grid, and let's snap it so it perfectly is centered. All right, let's go back to magazine and let's scale those edges more like this. All right, same for here. Okay, so this is pretty accurate width of the magazine. Let's double check it. We have actually this information about the frame, the grip width, and let's check if it's going to work. So let's just create a box, and right here, width, let's set it to 1.19. This is the width of the grip, and as you can see, there's a plenty of room for a grip, and we basically are fitting nice. This is okay. I can make the magazine a bit wider. Like this. Still be okay. So, alright, the magazine looks good. Let's delete this box for now. Let's move those guys into place where they should be. Right here. I'm not going to model the magazine right now. This thing is just like a placeholder and the representative of the like main proportions of the gun. So I'll just leave it like this for now. And now all main like parts are modeled, like the bullet, the barrel, the magazine. And now if I try to build up upon those, like the slide, the frame, this would be much easier because I have like this foundation on which I can rely in terms of proportions, like the width, the height, and all that kind of stuff. And it'll be much easier to model, okay? So let's go with modeling our frame. All right, so let's call this rounds. Just hide this right now. Click H on my keyboard and that it hides. Also, I would like to make this thing a bit longer, like this. This round goes in like this to the maximum, because actually rounds in magazine, they don't like go like straight like this. They actually angled like this. But I'm not going to bother about that right now. It's not that important. It is fine like this for now. Control S to save the scene. Okay, so let's go on into the frame. And then finally I will show you why I'm going to use ZBrush at last, and why it's good and why it's cool compared to like regular Maya tools. Okay, so let's go on. So before we go into modeling this frame, I would like to show you a small example of how the whole workflow is going to be, because since I'm going to model this frame, it will be like used in ZBrush and Maya. And before I do that, I would like to show this small example so that the modeling of the gun will be more clear. So how does the classic subdivision modeling works? I think pretty much all the people know that if you're into modeling. So you have your shape like this, for example. Ignore the cylinder for now, let's hide it. You add supporting edges like this and just smooth it out, and now you have your high poly model with nice bevels, rounded bevels. And here you go. When you need to have a bit more complex shape, for example, when you need to cut out this cylinder, out of this shape, and you can select this mesh, select this cylinder, go into mesh booleans and difference, and now you have this like mesh. You just add supporting edges right here like this, and you will have the same result. But it's quite time consuming and it's not that flexible, because for example, if you like in the middle of modeling you did this thing and you need to move the cylinder, for example, over here, like not in the center of this shape but like the half of this shape, and it turns out that you have to redo all this thing from scratch. And that's where Boolean operations and such software like Fusion 360 or CAD programs, they start to pop off because in those programs these shapes can be editable. Like you can move the cylinder to side and like the cutout will move. So same thing in ZBrush, and I will show you how it works right now. Let's Control Z this thing. For example, so we have this shape smoothed, this mesh, and let's add some supporting edges to this cylinder like this, and I will not do on the cap here, it's not necessary for now. So let's export this into ZBrush. Import, and the cylinder as well. Duplicate it, import. Okay, so now I can subdivide this mesh by hitting Control D, and same for this one, Control D. And what ZBrush can offer is live Boolean. It's pretty much the same as the CAD software, where you can do Boolean operations. So how this thing works, you just select your mesh, like your parent mesh, hit this arrow which says start now, and which means that all the meshes that are going to be below, they're going to be either subtracted from the parent mesh or added to it. Like these icons represent that. So this one is add, this one is subtract. So let's select this one as subtract and turn on live Boolean. I have my custom interface in ZBrush. I will explain it a bit later after the example. So I have this button here. You can find it in render, render booleans, live Boolean. Let's hit it on, and now you can see that this cylinder is cut it out from like the parent mesh, and you still can edit this cylinder because the Boolean operation is not applied, it just only previewed. So you can move it over here, you can like move it over here, you can do pretty much whatever you want, and the program will show you how it's going to look like. So the only thing that we are left to do now is just to apply booleans and somehow to deal with this sharp edge over here, because like this mesh is smoothed out, and but we still have this sharp edge around the cutout. So basically you go into subtool, boolean, make boolean mesh. You hit this, the program will create a new tool right here, and now you can see that this is one single mesh, and it is undoable mesh, so you can't go back for now at this tool, but you can go back to this tool and you have all your meshes stored here. So the next step is going to be Dynamesh. Like here, you can find it in geometry, Dynamesh, set the resolution and hit Dynamesh, and just smooth out those edges. I'm using polish crisp edges with a this icon with hole. Just go like this, and basically this is how it's done. You can see this is like a good looking high poly model with nice soft beveled edges. But like there's one issue about this process, is that, for example, if we go back, you can see that this edge is smoothed already and this one is sharp, and when we Dynamesh this and polish the whole model, you can see that this polishing affects already smoothed edges, and this is not desirable because you made this edge and you, for example, want it be the same like this, but when you smooth all the mesh, it becomes even more smoother. So the solution to this is to use not smoothed meshes for this live boolean operation. So in order to make it more understandable, let's go to Maya, back to Maya, and delete all of those supporting edges. Control D. Same for the cylinder. And now re-import it into ZBrush. Import this thing. Oh, it messed up. Excuse me. Let's append sphere and import it into sphere. No, still no. Somehow it moved. Okay, let's delete all of it. Use new tool, import. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so now the cylinder. Okay. So in order to make all the edges smooth evenly, to evenly smooth all of those, what I use creases. So what is crease? Crease is a function that helps you to define where the edge is sharp and where the edge is not sharp. For example, let's use this one. If I select this face by holding Control Shift and hit crease. You can find this in geometry, crease and crease. Crease, you can see when you're when you can see the edges on your mesh by hitting Shift F, your wireframe. You can see that it looks a bit different, and what it basically does, it tells the program that the face along these edges should be sharp. So now we just Control D a couple times, and you can see that this face is sharp along all of its edges. So let's go back, Control Z, and crease all the surfaces that we need, like this, and this one. What I'm doing here is this, crease. Now I hit Control D a couple times, and you can see that the model is subdivided, though the edges are sharp. This is quite useful because after we do the Boolean operations, we will have all the sharp edges still sharp, and the whole model will be smoothed evenly. So I'm going to show this. Let's do the same thing for cylinder. Crease, crease, Control D a couple times, and let's set it to subtract, like this. So we go back to Boolean, make Boolean mesh. Here we got it. Now Dynamesh it. Yep, Shift F to see the wireframe, it's Dynameshed. And let's go to Polish Crisp Edges. By the way, you can find this one in Deformation. Polish Crisp Edges over here. Let's crank it up a couple times. Right, so this is how it works. However, there is another thing worth mentioning. Going back to these, there is also a thing called dynamic subdivision in ZBrush. Right now, all those two meshes are divided in a classical way, just Control D, and using this slider, you can go through subdivision levels. However, this thing is not 100% useful for these purposes. Here is why. If we go back before I applied subdivisions right now, so let's do a duplicate of this mesh, move it sideways, and apply classic subdivisions as I did before. Control D a couple times. Yeah. But for this one, I selected it by holding Alt and clicking on the mesh, like this. Or you can just go into Subtool and select your mesh. For this one, I'm going to use dynamic subdivision. Basically, it's like hitting 3 in Maya. It is like some sort of preview of smoothed object. So you're not applying subdivision, you're just previewing how it's going to look. And there is a difference between those two. I will show the difference right now. Subdivisions, dynamic subdivision, dynamic, click, and here is the level of subdivisions. For example, this one has 5 levels, right? Let's do the same thing for this one, 5 levels. So now they look pretty much the same. However, there is a difference. When we go back to very first subdivision level for this one, let's go to level 1, And for this one, we just turn off the dynamic subdivision. And now there is a difference. Since I'm applying like classic subdivision over here, the original mesh is deformed. It deforms. Somehow the algorithm works like that. So you can see the difference over here. The distance between these two edges. Here is shorter, here is longer, and also like here is a straight line. Here it is angled. It's broken with these angles. So why is it bad? It is bad because I am using like the very first level subdivision for my low poly, and I want to low poly model be the same as I modeled it from the start, like this one. But this one is already messed up, and it's not like 100% accurately represents the original mesh. So that's why I'm not using like classic subdivisions. I'm going to like delete this mesh like this, and I'm using like dynamic subdivision. It's really useful. So you can turn it on by hitting just D like on your keyboard. So let's do the same for the cylinder. Let's Control Z backwards right now and hit just D and smooth subdivision levels 3, for example. Now this is how my Boolean scene looks like, because for high poly models I usually have two scenes. One scene is this like with creases and dynamic subdivision, when all of the meshes are not collapsed onto each other and everything is still editable. Like I can use all of those things. And the second scene in ZBrush is collapsed scene. Like for example, I am done with this modeling right here. I want to collapse this shape into next stage for Dynameshing. I go to Boolean, and if you click this Make Boolean Mesh, it will not use dynamic subdivision. Like you can see here, it collapsed it on the very first subdivision level. But there is a button over here, dsubdiv, which says basically that apply Boolean operation considering the dynamic subdivision. Like hit it on and make Boolean mesh. Now, as you can see, it looks the same as the Boolean scene. Like now we can use this mesh to Dynamesh, for example here, and apply polish crisp edges like this. Now we have like perfect even beveling on every edge, and this high poly model is like looking perfect. You can smooth it even more. Now to make it not that dense, right now it's almost million points, I'm going to decimate this. So you can go in Z plugin, decimation master, preprocess current. It will take some time for the program to compute this mesh. You can see the progress here. Okay, once it's done, you go back into Z plugin, and here instead the percent of decimation, for example, let's say 5 with something, and decimate current. You can see it's like it is now 53,000 active points. You can shift F for wireframe and see how different it looks like. Like it's dynameshed and decimated. However, this decimated model still going to work perfectly for high poly. Now let's export this back into Maya. Let's delete these guys. Import. Here it is. I usually apply material, reflective material, and as you can see, all the edges on this mesh are hard edged. You should also apply the soften edge. Now it's perfect. Now it's looking great. So this is the high poly model. And what's cool about ZBrush, unlike other CAD programs like Fusion 360, that is also like oftenly used for guns, that you can use your initial shapes to make a low poly. Like I go back into my Boolean operations scene with all of my meshes here still there, export it, import it here. Here I have it. Do the same for the cylinder, export it. Now apply the same Boolean operation for these meshes. So I select this one first, then this one, go into mesh Boolean's difference. And now all you have to do is just connect these vertices like this, leaving no n-gons. I'm not going to do this till the end, you got the point. So this is the process for like the whole workflow using ZBrush. Because this is really useful. Using ZBrush allows you to use your initial shapes that you used for Boolean meshes, to use for low poly. You can't do that in Fusion 360 because the mesh is going to be extremely dense and you will have to edit it for a long time. And as far as I know, none of those modern CAD programs allow you to do that. However, ZBrush has all the same functionality, pretty much almost the same functionality, but still it can preserve your initial meshes, and you can import into ZBrush for Booleans like anything you want. Any kind of object, it will be used like easily and perfectly in this program and will be cutted or added for your initial mesh like no problem. And that's why it's so useful. So for like this is high poly, this is low poly, and it is perfectly aligned. No need for explode your model. No need to like build a low poly model from scratch. It is already there. So this is pretty much the whole workflow for high poly and low poly using Maya and ZBrush. So knowing all of that, let's delete it. Let's go back to our gun. And what I'm going to do now is to model like the basic shape of this frame. And then in ZBrush, I am going to cut out all of those details so that at any point I can edit that cutout, move it or scale it or do whatever I want with it. And I will build up the whole scene with those like Boolean meshes. All right. So for now, let's actually export these meshes that I already have into ZBrush. Let's start from the bullet, and I will explain a bit about the interface of ZBrush and the files organization there. So export it into ZBrush. Delete all of this. We don't need this as well. This is a common error in ZBrush. It happens all the time. Be aware of that and save your scenes all the time. When you try to delete all the meshes from your tool, it can crush. So let's start from the new scene. Here we go. Here's the bullets. And by the way, when you import something and it has n-gons like this, you will have this message, which actually just asks you how to connect those vertices. Use symmetrical triangles only. This will create triangled faces on the places where n-gons were. Like here we have a big n-gon, and ZBrush will collapse those things into triangles. This is like okay. Do this. So for this bullet, for this cartridge, let's hit D, and the program will ask you if you want to auto-activate dynamic subdivision. Always yes. And as I mentioned before, this is not like classical subdivision, it's just preview. And now about file organization. In ZBrush 2019, there's a great new feature called folders. You have this cartridge, select it, click new folder, and name it, for example, cartridge. And now it is in folder, and you can like hide and unhide all the meshes inside of it. Really useful. Let's do the same with the barrel. The barrel is not completed yet, but it is still usable mesh. And by the way, that's why, like before I'm doing low poly, I'm doing those like prepared meshes with exact amount of edges that I would need for low poly. Just like on the example before that I showed, this same model will be used for low poly. So making it with the required edges that you need will help you in the future, and you will not have to remodel it. So, by the way, we have this beveled edge here. Let's do a supporting edge here so that it will be straight. And now let's export it. Oops. So insert any kind of primitive in here, and like ZBrush have this weird import and export thing. So in order to import whatever you need, you should import it into like already existing shape. So you just insert any kind of standard primitive and then import into it our shape, the barrel. Same thing with the barrel. I go into geometry, crease. I can use actually this angle tolerance and see how it's gonna work. Crease, hit D, and it worked almost as I needed. I'm going to select these faces and deselect those and crease again. hit D. Yeah, now it looks exactly how I need it. Same thing here. Let's create a new folder, call it barrel. All right. Let's go back to this. Let's export this magazine. I will replace it with the proper mesh for mag, but just a bit later. I'm not even going to smooth it for now. New folder, mag. All right. So let's save our scene. So let's call it handgun boolean. All right. So now let's get to the general shape of the frame. Let's go back to specs for the gun, and we have the grip width. Let's use this information. Polymodeling box, and it's going to be 1.19 inches. So this box is going to represent the width of the gun. We'll just keep it right there. Let's go to the side view, and let's go with the main shape. So how I usually do this, I start with the box and delete all the faces except the one that is facing us. Go into side view and just like in a classic way, select verts, go into vertex mode, and just define the shape of the frame. Select edge, shift, drag, which will do the extrusion. And as you can see, I'm avoiding these parts because those parts are going to be cutted out with Boolean operations. What I'm doing here is just rough representation of the general shape. And right here and right now I'm thinking over what is going to be modeled and what is going to be cutted out. So keep in mind that thing. Extrude this. Extrude it over here. Edge. Like this. Turn off the grid. I'm using target weld. It is on my hotkey for X. You can find it over here. Target weld, select vert, or then hit target weld and click hold on it and move to another vertex that you want to weld it to and release, and this is how it works. So as you can see, this hole is going to be cutted out later. Right now it's going to be solid. So this is how it looks right now, just a flat surface. Let's turn on the transparency. So what I should also keep in mind is the edge flow. Like this area is not looking like perfectly. You have to make it somewhere like this. Yeah, like this, so that you have like four-sided faces flowing along this edge. Like this. Let's give this shape a bit of a thickness. Select all the edges, shift drag, go into top view, snap to grid, turn on the grid, and move those edges to the center, like this. And now I'm going to apply symmetry for this mesh. So Control D, scale by X -1. It is symmetry. The symmetry is applied. Select those two meshes, combine together, and select the verts along this symmetry line and weld them. There should be like 2 times less vertices. 37, yeah. Okay. So this is a rough representation of the frame. Now I will do those bevels over here, same as here. Like when I hit 3, I'm looking how this frame is subdivided. Let's apply material. And this is too sharp for subdivided model. And basically for those kind of big objects, I'm trying to make this basic starting shape as close to original as possible, because again I'm going to use the same thing for low poly, and if I do this really accurate according to the original object, I will not have to edit it too much while the low poly stage. So obviously this is not acceptable. This is a sharp edge over here. I need to make those bevels. If I just delete, no, bevel. Yep, something like this. Go into vertex mode. Now in order to affect both sides, I turn on the symmetry, object X, right? Move those verts like this to make the topology look better. This frame is quite complex object, and you will have to keep in mind all of the different aspects of it. For example, this place, like it looks this way, so you have to make it look like this, obviously. Let's go into side view. Move those verts like this. Make it look the way I need it. Yep. So right now I'm basically blocking out the main shapes, and it will be possible to edit those later. As you can see, I'm like hitting 3 to look how this thing looks when it's subdivided. This should be perfectly round, as you can see over here. Whoops. trying to match this shape at this image. And as you can see, I'm using like classic tools for subdivision modeling for now. Nothing too complicated and special, just trying to get the form right. So let's do the same part for the front. Bevel. Let's keep it like this, but we will increase the bevel like on the grip. Let's hide this mesh for now. Keep in mind that this is a symmetry on, so whenever I click on this vert, it selects the opposite one on the other side. This is quite long process, but it have to be done properly because this shape is quite complex. Let's align those like this. Right, I don't like this sharp edge over here. Same one as it here. What you need to do is to distribute all of those vertices like on the same distance from each other, so that there were no sharp edges. this. For now, for better understanding, I can create this supporting edge so that the bottom line would look sharper, like this. I will like delete it later when exporting into ZBrush, but for now I can keep it so that it would more accurately represent the mesh. What I did here is selected faces, hold D, and you can now align pivot to any of those objects. For example, those faces, click on face, and the pivot will turn right in the direction of the normal that is facing this face, like this. So I can now scale along those faces like this so that it could look right exactly how I need it. Let's add this edge line here. Transformation constraint edge slide here gives you opportunity to move the vertice straight along the edge, so it will not break the silhouette of this edge, as you can see here. It's really useful feature if you don't want to mess the silhouette, like this. As you can see here, I try to keep as much like perfect looking polygons for edged polygons, no triangles, no n-gons. This is really useful for creating meshes for subdivision right now, because we need this base mesh subdivided, and only then we will cut out all the rest parts. So this n-gon right here creates not the best looking artifact, or shading, connect. Yeah, now it looks smooth. Turn off the edge slide. Okay, so I need to create a support edge on top of this thing in order to show like this step down, but it also creates like this sharper line over here. So in order to avoid that, what you can do is to select these faces, these vertices, and move it move them away from like others, make the equal distance between these two, and the sharp line will disappear. However, keep those together right here, like this. Let's go back to a side view and see how it matches the silhouette. And on the side view, you just see better the edge flow and make those like lines look better. So let's define a bit more like these like curves for finger grips. In order to do that, I'll just move those verts closer to these and make them stand out a bit. Yep, this looks better now. I don't like this line over here. The verts are too close to each other. Go into side view again and redistribute those verts on an equal distance from each other so that there were no lines like this. Whoops. Three. Always pay attention on those highlights from the material, so that's why it's important to have a reflective material. You can also edit this in here in Hypershade. Select your blend material and play with those sliders. For specular color, you can see how it makes difference in terms of this like highlight over here. Make it more reflective so that you can see all of the shading and the edge flow on the smooth version, on the smooth mesh. It's really useful. So let's add the edge here. Align it. so that this line looks a bit sharper. It was too smooth. So we're getting close for a good shape for now. Let's define this shape a bit more so it would match the silhouette over here. Move it down. Same as here. Like this. Let's make these things match. So for now, the main part that we should pay attention as much as possible is this grip area, because as you can see, all the rest parts are going to be cutted out. So no need to worry too much about like this place, because it's not going to look like this, but this part is still not that accurate. We can still see this like a bit sharp edge, should be even smoother. This. Just aligning those edges. Let's move those in just a bit. See how it looks. Yeah, you can see the difference. Like here it's a bit sharper and it goes blurred and blurred towards the lower part of the frame, and it's kind of around here. Let's do the same here. By moving those verts further, I make this line a bit more blurred. Okay. So I guess it's pretty much it for the base like shape of the frame. So let's move on to exporting this into ZBrush and starting cutting out all of the unwanted parts. Okay,